Hi everyone, I'm Colin and you're watching my FlossTube channel, Stitch Apocalypse. Today I'm going to be doing a WIP Parade. I'm going to go through this really quick because I actually just want to get to the stitching. If you watched my last video, which was a finished parade, a 2025 finished parade, I organized those things by style. This video I am organized by chronology, so it is chronological. I'm going to start the video. I'm going to start the video by showing you my 8 WIPs. Then I'm going to talk about some of the themes and the trends and the goals I have for the upcoming year. I'll talk about like individual piece goals when I'm showing the piece, and I'll talk about more broader, thematic, philosophical world goals after. And then after that, I'm going to be showing you 4, maybe 5 pieces, which I am planning on starting in the upcoming year. For those of you who've never watched my channel, I guess hello, I'm Colin. I know people love a WIP Parade, so maybe some new people are watching this, or some people who, whatever, have forgot about me. Sick. And I stitch mostly reproduction samplers, or I guess like when I'm thinking about this, like January 3rd, 2026, I stitch mostly like modified reproduction samplers on linen at this point, almost exclusively, and almost always with my own conversion. Okay, let's show some stitching. I have 2 WIPs from 2026. No, I have 0 WIPs from 2026. I have 2 WIPs from 2024 and 6 WIPs from 2025. And yeah, let's go do it. The first WIP I have to show you is The Beast by Long Dog Sampler. This is, by Long Dog Sampler. I don't know. I'm doing this with my own color conversion of DMCs, and I'm stitching it on 36 count antique white linen. I started this January 23rd, 2024. So we're coming up on 2 years on this thing, and I'm not happy by how much stitching there is. I wish that there was more. So this is what it looks like. When I was starting this, I guess maybe these things have all kind of blended together. When I was starting this, I was much more into like meaning. I think I felt that things could mean things. And I was also reading a lot about like demonology and Satanism, and particularly its like relationship with activist political movements. I had read Revolutionary Demonology. I had been watching like Antichrist a lot, which I love Antichrist. And I had read a couple things from like, or about Martin Luther, and just kind of the way that reading and Satanism and political movements and whatever are all sort of like combined together. And so that's kind of how I ended up choosing the colors and the way that I wanted this to look. My goal was for it to look like it was a stamped, like a printing press, like the letter stamped from a printing press. I'm stitching this with, I don't know, I would say when I started this, it was absolutely my favorite DMC color, 3371, which is this like dark, very dark brown. I'm finding myself drawn less to dark colors and to neutrals. So I would probably start this the same way now, but my goal for this, and like this is probably one that I don't know if I'll meet my goal on this. I guess my goal for this is I would like to finish this whole band. And I think in a perfect world, I would like to finish this bottom band, but I'll probably only finish half of it. But that is the beast. I'm going to show you my backs too. I love showing a back. I learned to stitch when I was really young, and only got back into it at the end of 2023. And so this was maybe like my second or third WIP I'd ever started, which one is Psycho, and two, I am actually really proud of how I was able to like really get back into it after not doing it for probably 20 years. Probably like 25 years. But that's what my back looks like. I don't love backstitching the way that like stitchers want to backstitch. I almost always do a double running stitch. So I don't know. Particularly when stitching on white, I think it gives a much cleaner look because you can't see the stitch through the back. But here you can see there's actually like a lot of subtlety in it. Yeah. The red is 666. And I posted my first floss tube video January 2025. And I would say this is a piece that I got a lot of attention for, which is exciting, but I think that I don't know. I like it. I'm pretty intense about cutting stuff out of my WIP pile if I don't like it anymore, and I just don't stitch on this one very much, but I do really like it. Yeah, and so that's The Beast by Long Dog Sampler. I guess I then kind of found out about reproduction samplers, that they weren't really a thing that I like cared much about, which is crazy when I think about what my stitching looks like now. Yeah, when I think about what my stitching looks like now, it actually is crazy that I was not immediately drawn to reproduction samplers, but I was not. But then I kind of found out about them and I started stitching them and seeing them more and really found myself being drawn to them. And the first reproduction sampler that I ever started, and it's still a WIP, is CRS 1713. I have finished part 1 and have now moved on to part 2. So this is what part 2 looks like. I started this on April 11th, 2024. I'm stitching it on a piece of fabric, which I believe is maybe like a washed silk that I found at a fabric store in Rhode Island where I used to live, which comes out to maybe like a 17 count. And so I'm stitching it 2/1 with mostly the called for DMCs. I've made a couple changes and I'll point them out. And so this is what it looks like now. It is getting to the point where I will not be able to fit it all into camera without stepping back. But here is sort of a slow creep. I'm really enjoying this. I guess it started my love for reproduction samplers, which is really cool. But if I was starting it now, I definitely would pick my own colors. I would really want to take some of the like darker, muddier colors, like these browns, and make some of them a lot redder. And I have incorporated a little bit of red here on the pelican. So that is not a swan. That is the pelican in her piety, which is a traditional motif which showcases what, like medieval, what's Dark Ages, European, I don't want to call them peasants because it probably wasn't only peasants, but people in Europe many, many moons ago believed that pelicans would stab themselves with their beak to draw blood, and then that blood would nourish their own children. And it was because the pelicans, like, they like chew up their food and then kind of spit it into the bird's mouth, and at the time people thought it was blood. It was then kind of co-opted by Christians, as all like motific myths were, and still are, to be kind of a symbol of Jesus's sacrifice. Obviously not very religious, but I do think there's something very like metal about like this kind of pelican self-stabbing intensity that I'm very drawn to. And so I made it more red than it was. I also, every time Lomas CRS put her initials in the year that she was stitching, I also put my own initials in the year. So you can see CRS 1713, and then here upside down is CTM 2024, because it was 2024 when I did that part. And then you can see down here CRS 1712, and then CTM 2025, because it was 2025 when I stitched that part. And I'm just going to continue doing that. I'll just put every year that I worked on it on this piece. So I guess it is calling for a 2026 now. That is CRS 1713. Down here you can see the Lamb of God, which is quite cute too. I'll show you the back. Another really intense back. My grandma was really intense about the back when she was teaching me how to stitch. And in some ways I would really like to be someone who had a sloppy back. I think there's something kind of, it's very like girls, right? It's very like, I don't give a damn, I do what I want kind of thing. But unfortunately I do give a damn. And yeah, unfortunately I do care quite a lot that my backs are very clean. Although I have loosened up a little bit, but I still keep a very tidy back. And those are all of my WIPs from 2024, which is, there is something kind of right about only bringing like 2 or 3 WIPs from each year. For 2025, for 2025, I really found myself wanting more, I don't know how to say this. As I was stitching, I was also reading quite a bit more about embroidery and about stitching, and I was watching people on FlossTube, and it felt to me like the kinds of stories that people would tell about the girls who were stitching these, and also the historical writing that I was reading at the time, and like the historical writing that I was reading about the time, and also just like from other places, including I guess my own intuition. It really felt like, how do I put this? It really felt like that, yeah, there was kind of this overarching idea that like little girls of the past were somehow vastly different from little girls of the present. And, or maybe weren't really different from little girls of the present. But I think in particular, I had pretty serious issues with maybe a little bit the Sierra 1713, but the way that people were charting and were choosing pieces that had themes of chastity and softness and like religiousness and whatever, that maybe were true for some people, but they had such like they had this ability to kind of paper over the diversity of styles of stitching. And so basically all I'm saying is this year, my reproduction samplers have gotten quite a bit more bold. And it had already started towards the end of 2024, but certainly now I'm only doing stuff that's like pretty extreme color-wise. And so on January 22nd, 2025, I started Franzi 1870 by Reflet Soie. This is a Berlin Woolwork sampler. This is a Biedermeier sampler. And I am stitching this on 32 count flax linen, which has become one of my favorite. All of my fabric is on Zweigart. So everything I stitch is on Zweigart. It's cheap and it's great and it's easy, and I'm not gonna buy, I can dye stuff myself. I'm not buying hand-dyed linen. Yeah. And so this was just me kind of grappling with the idea of like, what kind of girls, if I were alive back then, what kind of girls would I be friends with? And I would absolutely not have been friends with a girl who was stitching like exclusively symmetrical samplers in subtle colors, right? Those aren't the people I'm friends with now, and they weren't the people who I would have been friends with then. This still has a needle and a dangling thread in it because I put it down maybe 5 minutes before I started the video. I'm stitching this 2/2. Whoop. With the called for DMC. For those of you who watch my floss tube, there are actually things on this that you have not seen before. So I have worked on this since the last time I showed it. I have stitched this little lamb. I have stitched this block here. And I have done maybe 2/3 of this one down here. This one is a stitch. I'm gonna have to Google what the name of it is. It's not a cross stitch. This is charted to be done 1/1. I wanted something a little bit bigger. By a little bit, I mean 4 times as big. And so I'm stitching it 2/2 for like this top section. That has caused the kind of absurd complication of these bottom motifs being charted 2/2 and being twice as big as, I guess 4 times as big as the 1/1. And so some of them I'm doing in 4/4. So this one and this one and this one, this one are done with 4 threads of DMC over 4 warps. A couple of them are done in Smyrna crosses. So this one here is done in Smyrna crosses. And this one is done half in 4/4, half in Smyrna crosses. Essentially, I found that because of the way DMC blacks are thinner than a lot of their other threads, that too much of the fabric was coming through on this one. And so I wanted it to be denser, and so I did Smyrna crosses instead. A couple of them are done on pearl cotton, or done with pearl cotton number 3. So this one here, which is also not cross stitch. And this one here. But I really love Franzi. I think this has been my kind of number one focus piece for the year. I have gotten quite a lot of work done on it. Yeah, this is like really substantial work for me for the year. My goal, I finished my big specialty stitch piece a couple weeks ago, and so for a time, Franzi is going to be my specialty stitch piece. And so my goal is to finish all these bottom blocks because they have all kinds of different stitches in them. Oh, and you can see here I was experimenting with, for this block, what kind of floss I wanted to use. If I wanted to do the pearl cotton or if I wanted to do DMC. And I left the pearl cotton because I decided that was what was best. So this one, the bottom section has been kind of trial and error, and I end up talking about it more, but I do really love the top section, and it is just like really easy to stitch. So this piece is really good because it's like a combination of like the easiest stitching I have and also some of the most that I have to think the most for. But that's Franzi. She's very happy. I am really drawn to the colors of this. I find that like the really bold, I also said this in my finished parade, for the past year I've been really drawn to these like really bold red colors, and I am planning in the upcoming year a companion piece to Franzi, which I am pulling motifs from 2 different samplers and kind of putting them together in a similar style. But the new one will not be red. It will probably have some red in it, but it will be not primarily red and green. So that is that. Okay. I had a couple really kind of intense and extreme colored pieces, and I guess I would describe myself as kind of a reactionary stitcher, in that a lot of my stitches, I'm starting them kind of in reaction to previous pieces that I'm working on, because I think that, at least for me, to get like true understanding of a thing, I start in this like one kind of place, and then I find myself trying out the like exact opposite place and like allowing them to kind of clash into each other until I can figure out where I stand. I think that it's a good way, at least visually. I'm not doing that politically. That would be really psycho. I'm doing full-fledged horseshoe theory, where the horseshoe is like this and I exist right in the middle. Just kidding. But yeah. So I find myself kind of adopting 2 kind of visual extremes and playing around with them until I can kind of figure out what I am looking for. So this is my version of the Fruits of Plenty. I started it on April 24th, 2025. I'm also calling this Sludge on Sludge. So I am stitching this on 40 count chinchilla linen with DMC number 642. I was looking for a color that is kind of non-meaningful and also not at all eye-catching. And so this is what it looks like now. The goal is, it looks more noticeable on camera than it does in person. The colors kind of fade into each other because they are so similar. This one also has a dangling thread in it right here. So sorry about that, but I think I pulled it out to stitch on it and then was so kind of annoyed by the whole thing, I just put it away. And it's been in timeout since. Let's see. Do you think I even wrote it down? August? No. Yeah, so I I guess I've only stitched on this in April and May of 2025. This is another one like the Beast that I'm not super drawn to stitching on it often. I'm always gonna like have it and I'm always gonna stitch on it, but it's not a priority, but I am happy enough with it that it'll stay in my WIP pile for years until I either like move and like lose it in the move or like, I don't know, spill a martini on it and get so mad I throw it away. It also is like I have another modern folk embroidery piece to show you immediately after this. So I don't want this to be misconstrued, but I think that Jacob, who is the designer of modern folk embroidery, a lot of his designs are really beautiful to look at. They are just so like single motif heavy, and this one in particular is like very like leaf heavy, that I find it kind of annoying to stitch a lot because so many of my pieces, they're giving me such like diverse kinds of stitching in even just like a couple days that it's a lot harder for me to convince myself to stitch something when I'm stitching these leaves for a period of time. But that's where my work is. That's Fruits of Plenty. I'm not sorry I didn't iron, so. Then, now I'm going to show you another modern folk embroidery piece. This is Lammegein Pot 1852 by Modern Folk Embroidery. I'm stitching it on 32 count smoke blue with my own conversion of silks. So this is done with 100 threes and also Gutermann silks, which are honestly very similar to 100 threes, and I like them quite a lot. And I have easier access to them because a place near my house, sorry, I'm getting this fold in the middle out by stretching it. A place near my house sells some of them. Yeah, I'm doing this with my own conversion. It looks like this. Oh, I will have put a photo up at some point. Yeah, so it looks like that. I love stitching with the 100 threes. You are never going to hear me talk bad about 103. This is what the back looks like. This I'm stitching as kind of a series of stitches that I'm trying to do, essentially where I'm doing like smaller samplers, although this one is not that small, which I don't have great spatial awareness. I don't have a good idea of like how much space what takes what. And so it is larger than I intended, but I am stitching this, and my goal is to have it be part of a like a series of like that, a series of smaller for me in particular, smaller samplers that are done on like brighter colored linen with really bright silks. I'll show you one of the other ones and it'll probably make more sense, but that's what this is. EMCM Anno 1787 and Lammegein Pot 1852. And they'll turn into like a string where they hang. That's kind of maybe like a 3 or 4 year plan for these. Yeah, but that's what that looks like. I really enjoy this. I had a moment where I really hated it and I didn't stitch on it for like 4 months. That can't be right. Maybe like 3 months, but I'm back into it now. Particularly looking at it, I'm like, it looks so good. So I guess WIP Parades are really good because I'm like ready to work on this again. Yeah, that's Lammegein Pot by Modern Folk Embroidery. after that, the next two pieces I have to show you are where I started sort of in July. So this one I definitely started in July. The other one I started in July. I started them both in July. As part of a Christmas in July thing I was doing. And so this is Winter Sampler, designed by Sandy Orton. You can get this from Kooler Designs, and it's probably in a bunch of vintage magazines. I am Sandy Orton's biggest fan. If you're in the comment section, be like, I'm a bigger fan than Sandy. Honestly, maybe you've stitched more Sandy Orton pieces than I have, and that's only because you've been stitching longer than me, because I'm Sandy's #1 fan. I love Sandy Orton. I love her designs. I love her. She has, I say this in every video, she has such a clear understanding of the way that you can create shapes and colors and images with like very few stitches. Yeah, and so I started this as part of a Christmas in July thing I was doing. And I've stitched on it pretty consistently. This is what it looks like. It's obviously very stitch heavy, and very back stitch heavy, but I'll show you what it looks like up close. But particularly like down here, I'm gonna show you this village. I haven't done the back stitching on this yet, but you can even see that like this is already looking exactly like a little cabin in the woods in the winter. And that to me is crazy because it's so few stitches. And then it'll get back stitched and it'll just look crazy, like so amazing. But I love Sandy. I am someone who likes back stitching. And so you're never gonna see me like complain about back stitching. But I've gotten good work done on this. I'm really proud of my work. My back on this one is kind of shit because there's so many color changes, because sometimes you'll just put like 2 or 3 stitches in, and I'm also stitching it 3/2 on a 32 count linen, flax again, and so the stitches are in there really tight, and so that leads to more knots than I would like, but I like how it looks and I don't mind how it stitches, and so I am not gonna like stop doing it. I have goals of like in my lifetime stitching all 4 of these Sandy Orton seasonal samplers, but I don't know. I worked on that one for 6 months and I'm probably not even a quarter done, so who knows how that'll go. Then, also for Christmas in July, I started Holidays by the Prairie Schooler. This is a series of small ornaments. Oh, my ring. This is a series of small ornaments. I have finished 2 of them, which I showed in my finish parade, and I have started on a 3rd one, which is the Santa on the Sleigh. And this I started November 25th, 2025. But I started the whole holidays piece in July 27th. This is the only piece I have, well, CRS 1713, but that doesn't count, that is done on, I guess it's the only piece I have that's done on a partially synthetic material. This is on a 36 count light taupe Modena. And here what the other 2 look like. But I don't know, there's not much to talk about on this. The block stitching can be fun, but it can also be annoying. I guess I'll say this, for CRS 1713, I really want to finish part 2 this year and get maybe like a 1/3 of the way done on part 3. For all my small pieces, I want them to be finished by the end of 2026, including these. maybe I'll finish all of them by 2026, but like, I don't love the idea of something like this hanging out for 2 years. But that is that. Then I didn't start anything until September. So from July to September. And I started this on September 14th, 2025. Although it doesn't look anything like this. This is Ramoncita Pita from European Reproduction Samplers, also known as Samplers Berlin. The designer's name is Sabine Tetera Grunbacher. Yeah, this is a Mexican sampler. The original is currently in the collection of the Cooper Hewitt Design Museum in New York City. I was very drawn to this because I believe that it really encapsulates the complications of Mexico's history, and also maybe like I don't want to say more nuanced because I think that's kind of judgmental, but maybe a more holistic approach to like how samplers came to be, because this is drawing from some traditional Mexican images, some French alphabets, some animals from across the world, and it's also not the kind of thing you see quite a lot. And this was kind of I would say maybe the culmination of my year in red. I am not stitching it like this. I essentially have a piece of fabric and I have put a border on it, and I am filling it in with motifs, and they're very dense and they're very packed in, and it looks like this. So for those of you who watched my videos, you have not seen this horse before. This is done on 40 count mallow linen with a Veriswa Silk 103s in the number 137. So it's not the super dark red that I like exists in Franzi, but it is very much a red sampler. And it does look really good. I'm stitching it 1/2 for part of it and 1/3 for other part of it. So you'll see like the flowers up here are 1/3 and then this is 1/2. And essentially whatever Miss Pita was, however she did it, that's how I'm doing it too. So some of the motifs she did over 2, some of them she did over 3. I'm just kind of copying her. Yeah. This was my birthday start for 2025. My birthday is September 23rd, but I started this a little bit early because I was excited and I was annoyed by all my WIPs. So, and this is what I've done in the last like 3 months. And the final WIP to show you, which honestly is crazy, because I guess in my head, I don't know. I was stitching less since I've started this one, so I guess that makes sense, but I haven't started anything since October, which it is January. The last thing I have to show you is Maggie May. This is an animal cracker from Stacy Nash. It's done on 46 count flax with my own 103 and Gutermann silk conversion. This is what she looks like right now. When finished, she will be my 5th completed animal cracker. And I have not fully finished any of them. So, as time has gone on with my animal crackers, I've gotten more and more comfortable and felt more and more of a desire to make them look really different from the original. And so she has this kind of grayish purple body, and will be wearing a red cardigan and a pink dress. She's like the iconic one. I feel like everybody stitches Maggie May, but yeah, I don't know. I like the animal crackers. They're kind of fun, dumb block stitching, but I'm stitching on a small enough fabric count that it does take a little bit of thought, which I like cannot do intense block stitching on like a 32 count. It just like, I just get so like tired of it because it's so easy that then I just don't want to stitch it. And then I just end up like on my phone or like on TikTok watching like, I don't know, whatever it is we watch on TikTok. Yeah, and those are all my WIPs, which honestly is crazy. And I'm going to talk about some of the, I guess, looser goals that I have for the year. I do find myself getting more and more into, I guess I'll call it vibes-based stitching as opposed to like meaning-based stitching. I think when I started stitching, I felt really drawn to every color being really meaningful, every piece that I pick having like references and kind of doing research onto the themes and all that kind of stuff. And I think as I have continued, I still do that sometimes, but I also have gotten more comfortable just kind of stitching on vibes. And I think part of that is, one, I'm doing all that stuff anyway in like other parts of my life, and it just like is the kind of thing that occasionally I do need something to just be, I'm not occasionally, actually quite a bit. I need something to just be kind of stupid. And the other part is that like I do read quite a bit, and I am seeing movies. Like I saw Murdy Supreme today. I am like, a lot of my friends are artists. A lot of my friends are, you know, like involved in stuff, I guess. I don't quite know how to. And so I guess for me, I have gotten more comfortable kind of just being like, I know my stitching is being influenced by stuff, even if I'm not fully clear about why I'm making the choices I'm making, is that I am making them for like specific reasons. And in some ways to kind of roll with the vibe of like, this is what I feel like is right, actually does like help me, is like midway through the stitching, I realize it, the actual act of stitching and like thinking about my stitching and working on it regularly is actually also like a research process for me. And I find that when I get into a piece where I've done really extensive, like, thinking about colors and making sure everything has like a specific meaning, I actually feel like the work itself is a lot flatter than the kind of complicated influences of a piece that isn't super, super, super planned. The second thing, I'm not frogging. That's what I've decided this year. I'm going to try to never frog. I don't want to rip anything out. I've already been the kind of person who is fudging my stitching if something is wrong. But I really, really, really don't want to rip a single stitch out this year. Reproduction people are editing the charts to make the stitching more perfect than it is. So I'm watching you. But I do think there's something kind of special about, particularly something like Ramoncita Pita, which is the red sampler. There's something kind of special about her doing kind of her version, and then 200 years later, me doing kind of my version, actually maybe 150. Yeah, whatever, however many years. Doing kind of my version, and then maybe like 150 years from now, someone else does their version. And these three things are all like related, but they're all really specific to the person making them, as opposed to being a direct reproduction, which says almost nothing. It doesn't really say much about the girl who stitched it. It doesn't really say much about you. It doesn't really say much about her world. It doesn't really say much about yours. There's not much to do with it. But so part of that is like embracing my own hand and embracing my own handwork. I'm finding myself drawn increasingly to indigo and blue, that kind of vibrant but deep blue color, particularly on a really bright white. So I have a couple projects that I'm going to show you that I'm stitching on kind of white, just white fabric. People don't stitch a lot, particularly for samplers. I'm talking mostly about people who stitch samplers. People who stitch samplers are not usually stitching it on kind of just a regular like white or like platinum white or even like an antique white linen. Usually they're stitching it on something tan, something gray, something more neutral. And I think there's something kind of exciting about stitching on white. I don't know, I'm drawn to the white. And this is something I've been thinking about for a while. I did a couple years ago started a project that was entirely white floss on white fabric that actually just didn't work, in my opinion. And it is my project, so my opinion is the only one that matters. But I'm finding, essentially what I'm saying is like, when I was deciding kind of throughout 2025 that there's something about like this bright white fabric that I'm really drawn to. That was before Pantone put out the color. In terms of floss tube, two things I think might happen this year. I might do a light rebrand, which I think is kind of funny. I think I like the idea of rebranding every like 18 to 20 months. I'll always be Stitch Apocalypse, but maybe like a new title sequence, maybe a new like thumbnail, maybe I don't know, maybe something new, and just allowing myself to evolve, I guess vibes, but like allowing myself to evolve and allowing my channel to evolve and feeling like comfortable in that and just like letting it happen. I have some ideas about what that might look like. I'm not sure exactly. Yeah. And then also I don't know. I also think that like the floss tube tropes have become, I think about them more. I'm following them more now than I ever have. But at the same time, I don't know, what does a floss tube look like outside of I start a video, I show you my whips. I don't show haul, so if you're looking for haul, but like I show you my whips, I talk a little bit about my personal life, maybe I show you some haul, maybe I show you a book I read, or like a board game I played, and then the video ends. And I guess maybe my goal this year is to play around with the tropes. I don't think I'm ever going to be like escaping the tropes because I don't think we ever can, but I do think that the tropes can be like a useful tool, and the like form of a floss tube can be played with to create new experiences with stitching. But I don't know what that looks like yet. That's just something I'm always thinking about, but I guess I've been thinking about more recently. And then finally, I want to stitch something really ugly. I want to stitch something that's actually kind of repulsive. Because I don't know. Can something be beautiful if it can't be ugly? I guess that's what I've been thinking about recently, is like, what does it mean for something to be beautiful? What does it mean for something to be attractive? What does all that mean? And like, can it be those things if there isn't also a thing that is ugly? And I feel 100% confident that there are things that are like in good taste and in poor taste. But taste is much more easy to like figure out. Like, I personally think that the stitching that looks like graphic design, right? I'm not drawn to that. I want my stitching to look like stitching. I don't want it to look like a poster. But that doesn't mean it's ugly. I'm sure there are people who think that my stitching is really tacky, because it probably is pretty tacky, but that doesn't mean that it's ugly, right? So I guess my goal is like, maybe I'll stitch something kind of ugly. But then how do you do that, right? Because like clashing colors I'm drawn to. I think they're quite interesting, quite attractive. And so you'll get like kind of people with more conservative, not politically, but like taste, saying things like something like this would be ugly because the blue doesn't match the red and the colors kind of clash and it's not well balanced. And I guess I can see that, but at the same time I find this more interesting than like a well balanced sampler with really coherent colors. And so then the question is like, what would that look like? So I'm gonna have some thoughts about it and play around some ideas. And I guess those are kind of my loose thoughts that I'm playing around with as I'm coming into the year. I might realize like 2 months in that actually what I'm thinking about is totally different. But that is what's happening. I am going to show you 4 WIPs. And I'm going to talk about a plan I might have for a Sal. And I'm putting this out there now, right? And it's towards the end of the video, so I know that like people who are locked in to my whatever are still, if you're still watching, like cool. But I'm going to talk about that Sal at the end. So the first thing that I am thinking about starting, and I'll probably start in the next couple of weeks, is Laura Vorgenson 1853 by Hicks Creates. This is a reproduction sampler. Yeah, so that's Laura Vorgenson 1853. And I am stitching this on white. Or at least I'm planning on it. Yeah, like I said, I'm planning on... Ugh, got stuck in the zipper. No! Now this piece and I are beefing already. I haven't even started it yet. So I am planning on starting this on a white piece of fabric. So this is 36 count white Edinburgh linen from Zweigart. Just kind of a classic bright white, not even an antique white. And I'm planning on doing it with my own color correction, which is the only thing I have like fully kitted and like ready to start. And I guess maybe this is a little bit of an experiment on stitching something ugly and also an experiment in white. How do I want to do this? I guess like that. And so these are the colors I'm thinking of stitching it with, which is, it looks more Easter on camera, which I guess is fine. It looks more kind of sickly in person. And basically I just want these colors to be kind of pale, kind of gross, kind of blah. And probably the chart will not be in the same shape it is on the chart. The piece won't be. I am thinking about lightly stacking some of the motifs to see like what that would look like. But that is, yeah, Laura Vorgenson 1853. I'm sure you'll be seeing more of this. I have already started this piece at one point and gotten rid of that WIP. That was on a piece I was working on called Maximum Motif Density. If you want to know more about that, you can check out my video called Maximum Motif Density or my Finish Parade, where I talk about the failure of maximum motif density. I also want to stitch an anniversary sampler for my parents. I had started one using a modified version of an Al Forest chart that honestly was just like too big to be fun. And so I have this idea of doing something smaller and on with a much larger, like this is on a 32 count. That one is on a 46 count. And so this is 32 count Winter Moon, which I guess looks more white on the camera. It's actually, oh, that's like the color it is. And I picked out some colors that I cannibalized some WIPs that I've gotten rid of, and I went through kind of my stash and just my various flosses. And so these are all DMCs, and so like I'll do with those and this and these, I think. This is a project that I'm not basing it off of any one chart. I am just gonna kind of put a motif here, put a border there. Laurie and Tim, like 50 years, because it is going to be their 50th wedding anniversary in a couple of years, and I would like to do it before then. Yeah, and so that's something I'm probably going to start this year, but I haven't really planned out what that'll look like. I talked a little bit about Franzi and how she was quite red, and about how I was thinking about doing a companion piece to her. And now I guess I'll tell you I'm planning on doing it in blue. This is another piece of 32 count flax, and the same size as Franzi is, so another big boy. And I'm thinking about combining two samplers, the motifs from two samplers, and kind of moving the motifs around so that they look different. So here we have Jardins Italiens from Reflet Soie, and then another Reflet Soie, which is Woolwork sampler. So as you can see, both of these are pretty blue, heavy. And so I think if I combine these two, and for this one in particular, I am going to be doing a conversion, utilizing some colors from Franzi so that they work better as companions, and also so that the colors are brighter, because this is like pretty subdued. And then doing this in a similar kind of converted color palette. I haven't fully decided like what, I think I might do the Woolwork motifs like down the side, and then these kind of through most of it on the side, but I don't know, just to like mimic the Franziness without making them both be kind of at the bottom. But then at the same time, I'm like, why not just do them both at the bottom? But yeah, this is something I'm really excited to start, but I would like to be further along on Franzi so that I don't have two similar bright Woolwork samplers happening at the same time. And finally, another blue. This is kind of when I was talking about blue on white. This is also maybe a companion to Ramoncita Pita, but German. I have been drawn to the Virlanda samplers for a while now, and this one is also from European Reproduction samplers. This is METTA Putvarken, 1848. It has a whole bunch of these Virlanda motifs. And I am thinking about, I'm going to. I'm not just thinking about it, I'm going to do it. I am going to be stitching this on 46 count antique white Bergen linen, which looks like this, entirely in Alvareswa 391. And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about this like crazy bright blue on a white fabric. Is that just kind of this to me like is a screamer. this is really going to scream out from this fabric, and I'm really drawn to that. I bought every dark blue. I guess this is maybe more of a medium blue, but I bought all of the like vibrant but not light blues from 103s so I could test out which color I thought was the best. And just to build up my stash. Here's why. I also bought some whites and some like light beiges. I also had considered doing it in this color, but I think this one is what I'm looking for. I had a couple other ones that I didn't buy because I had them and I didn't need them, but this was just kind of to test out. I guess I'm doing haul now, but here are the other dark blues that I was thinking of doing. The only one that even was a candidate was this, but because these are just too desaturated. This is just so much better. So, but that's exciting, and I'm excited to do it. I'm thinking about having it be my birthday start for 2026, which is kind of crazy to be planning out a start for 9 months from now, but that is what that would look like, which is just so crazy. And so that is METTA Pootvarken. METTA Pootvarken, 1848. And now I am going to talk about one more thing, but I have to get it out of my binder. I wasn't planning on talking about this. I have been thinking about doing, like, hosting a Sandy Orton Sal. So you and I know I love Sandy. And I don't think I'm going to do it as like a, you have to stitch this one piece, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. But I have been, for a long time, been really drawn to this American Antique Sampler Chart by Sandy Orton. And I guess I'm thinking maybe in the summer, I was thinking about kind of maybe trying, if anyone has interest of doing like maybe a weekly Zoom call where we just kind of stitch Sandy Orton pieces, or where we just stitch in general. But I don't know, I think maybe the datedness of her style, particularly of her other pieces, means that like a lot of newer stitchers see this as much more of a novelty than I do. And I guess I want to take her as seriously as we take all the other designers who are much less like knowledgeable than she is. Sorry, everyone. But yeah, I guess if you could see a world in which you're like drawn to starting a Sandy Orton piece, I'm thinking about starting this one this year. And maybe we could get something like a Sandy Summer or I guess Sandy Spring, but I'm thinking about finals in the spring and graduating from college, and like I don't think that one's gonna happen. But I think it would be fun. She has some smalls too. I did a series of garden themed Christmas ornaments that she did. That would be like a good starting point for some people. She has her stockings that like I think there are a lot of people who work on them, but not very often. So yeah, I guess if you're still watching this an hour into this video and you're intrigued by a Sandy Orton Sal, yeah, comment or message me or whatever. Yeah. But that's really all I have to talk about. I have had a really good year of stitching in 2025. I can see also having a really good year of stitching in 2026. And I'm really excited to make it happen. And stitch beautiful things and also a couple ugly things, hopefully. But thank you all so much for watching. Bye!